Warning: the following reading contains mature content, such as blood and gore, murder, and horror elements. Viewers' discretion is advised. 10 Little Ponies by Forefront 1. Chapter 5. And then there were 5. The party cannon blast echoed through the castle, shaking every wall. Every pony stopped in place where they were and looked around, trying to find the source of the sound. While the location of the sound was unknown, it was clear the killer struck again. Celestia cautiously peeked out from the room she was hiding in, unsure if she should leave or not. Celestia walked out and quietly shut the door behind her. She then walked down the hall and around the corner towards where she thought the sound came from. Luna was out of breath from running when she heard the noise. She was previously trying to get away from whatever was watching her in the main room. She nervously looked behind her just to make sure she lost it before leaning up against a nearby wall to catch her breath. She knew from the sound that someone else died, but she didn't know who or where. So she started walking, hoping to find the victim before anyone else. Applejack quickly ran through the halls, trying to find the source of the explosion. She wanted to get to the scene of the crime alone. If she was ever going to get through the night, she needed to see how the murder played out. Plus, if she was lucky, she could find another suspect at the scene. She held on to her Stetson as she picked up speed. Twilight jerked awake at the sound of the blast and bashed her head on the side of the box. Wincing in pain, she adjusted her position and laid down on her back, facing upward. She couldn't tell how long she'd been out, but she did know that her head was killing her. It felt like someone threw a dictionary at her face. As she was rubbing her head, she could hear footsteps approaching her box. Twilight was unsure of what to do. There was no escape. She was cornered. After quickly going through her options, Twilight quickly fell to the floor and pretended to be knocked out again. Cowering in fear, Twilight heard the top of the box open.
Twilight? Are you okay?
She heard a cheerful voice say.
Pinkie Pie?
Twilight asked nervously. Twilight looked up to see Pinkie Pie holding up the top of the box and looking down at her.
Here, let me help,
Pinkie Pie said, as she held a hoof out to help Twilight out of the box. Twilight cautiously took Pinkie Pie's hoof as she stood up in the box. Her head must have still been injured because Twilight was very dizzy when she stepped out of the box. Losing her balance, Twilight fell against Pinkie Pie, who struggled to hold her up.
Whoa, easy,
Pinkie Pie said, balancing Twilight.
Okay, I'm fine,
Twilight said, regaining her senses. Pinkie Pie waited a second to see if Twilight could stand up before letting go. Twilight rubbed her head again, as it was still throbbing in pain.
What time is it?
Asked Twilight groggily.
I wish I knew, but I haven't seen you for a while. Why were you in a box?
Pinkie asked the wobbly alicorn.
I don't know. I think I dozed off in my private study, and next thing I knew, I was locked in a box.
Twilight said, trying to recall the info.
Speaking of which, how did you open the box?
She asked curiously.
Well, despite what you remember, there wasn't a lock on it when I found you,
Pinkie Pie said, pointing to the opened chest.
But Oh, never mind. How did you find me?
Twilight asked, changing the subject.
Oh, I was walking around near here when that explosion went off and I found this box at the bottom of the stairs. And everyone knows how much I love presents and surprises. And I just had to open it.
Pinkie Pie said happily.
So there was an explosion.
Twilight said, pondering the reason behind it.
I think the killer struck again. We have to go. The explosion wasn't far from here.
Pinkie Pie said, grabbing onto Twilight's arm and pulling her along. The two ponies walked up the stairs out of the basement. Actually, Pinkie Pie walked while Twilight somewhat stumbled and limped from the many injuries she had gained from being pushed down the stairs. Nothing serious, but she was in pain. Since Twilight had been out of the action for a while, she followed Pinkie Pie around.
So, where are we going?
Twilight asked, making it to the top of the stairs.
Well, by my calculations, I figured that since we know that another murder happened, I figured we could be the first ones to find it and solve the mystery.
Pinkie Pie said while jumping in the air.
I suppose so.
Twilight began.
Where did the murder take place?
She asked Pinkie as the two continued down a hallway.
Don't know, but I'm sure we can find it.
Pinkie Pie said cheerfully while she turned a corner.
Wait, you don't know? Then why am I wasting my time with this? I mean, the murder could be anywhere. It could take hours to find it. Did you even...
Twilight said before being stopped by Pinkie's hoof.
Why did we stop?
Twilight asked. The pink pony did not respond, but rather pointed a shaking hoof down the hallway. Twilight turned to see a horrifying sight. The right side of the wall was charred and covered in ashes, and farther down, a closet door was broken in half, with little bits of wood scattered around the hall. In the middle of all the rubble was a terrifying sight. Cadence's body was lying on the ground, completely burned, bones broken beyond repair, and lifeless.
I wonder, what happened?
Pinkie Pie said as her hair began to deflate. Twilight held back tears as she looked over the scene. Cadence was dead. There was no denying that. Twilight was about to stand up and leave when something caught her eye. Tucked away in what was the singed remains of Cadence's hair was a small piece of yellow confetti. Twilight slowly reached out and grabbed the confetti and stared at it.
Pinkie Pie?
Twilight began calmly.
How did you find me again?
She asked the mayor.
I was just walking around near here. Why?
Pinkie asked, looking down at Twilight.
Because I think you're lying!
Twilight shouted as she stood up and held the confetti in front of Pinkie Pie.
You're the killer, and you saved me from the box so you could kill me next!
Twilight shouted in pure rage.
Twilight? Why would I ever do something like that?
Pinkie Pie said in shock as she walked forward to calm Twilight down.
Stay away from me!
Twilight shouted, backing away.
You are just lying to me! Thanks to you, my friends are dead!
Twilight continued to shout.
Twilight, I'm not the killer!
Pinkie Pie screamed at her while she started to cry.
Oh yeah?
Twilight began as she looked down at the piece of confetti.
Let's see what everyone else thinks of that.
She said as she ran off into the castle, with Pinkie Pie right behind her.
Everyone! Pinkie's the killer!
Twilight shouted as loud as she could, running faster as she tried to get away from Pinkie Pie.
Go to the main room as soon as you can!
She shouted while running around a corner.
Twilight, stop! Listen!
Pinkie Pie shouted back as she continued to run with her. The remaining ponies heard the noise and tried to follow it. Applejack stopped hunting for the crime scene and instead turned to find Twilight and Pinkie running down the hallway behind her. Without thought, Applejack started following them. Luna heard that they were all heading to the main room and, after gathering the courage to return, decided to head that way as well. Celestia heard the commotion, turned around, and ran back towards the main room, hoping to catch up with everyone before it was too late. Everyone entered the room at virtually the same time, and Twilight quickly gathered everyone together to question Pinkie Pie.
It's over, Pinkie Pie.
Twilight began, recovering from the run.
Admit it, you're the killer,
she said, backing into the line with the others.
Please, let me defend myself. I'm not the killer.
Pinkie pleaded to the group. After a quick glance and a few nods, Celestia stepped forward and stared down at the pony.
Since most of us don't have any idea what's going on, you may give your defense,
she said stoically.
Thank you, Princess,
Pinkie said with a sigh. Pinkie Pie then stood up, took a breath, and began her defense.
I saved Twilight from a box she said she was trapped in, and we walked up some stairs. After we turned a corner, we saw Cadence, dead. Twilight saw a piece of confetti, and I assumed she thought that I shot Cadence with my party cannon along with all of the other supplies in the closet over there,
Pinkie Pie said, pointing to the other side of the room.
Also, the only pony who knew the combination to the padlock on the door was Twilight,
Pinkie said nervously.
Are you implying I'm the killer?
Twilight asked in disbelief.
Well, there was no lock on the box you were, as you say, trapped in,
Pinkie Pie deadpanned. Twilight looked around nervously as all the other ponies in the room slowly walked over to Pinkie Pie to defend her.
But there was a lock,
Twilight stammered.
So you say?
Luna said aggressively.
But a killer would say anything to prove their innocence,
she continued.
That's not proof, though. Plus, all of you are still suspects,
Twilight said, quickly pointing around at the group.
We ain't got nothing against us,
Applejack retorted.
Well,
Luna began. The group looked at Luna with wide eyes as they awaited what the princess had to say.
Well, what?
Applejack said bitterly, getting up in Luna's face.
When I was in here earlier, I may have seen a bag full of dragon sneeze leaves lying underneath the cider table,
Luna said sheepishly.
That doesn't prove anything.
Applejack snapped back at her.
Besides, there's nothing there now,
she yelled, pointing at the empty ground beneath the table.
Plus, you were acting strange earlier tonight. Acting more like the hunter rather than the prey,
Applejack continued.
I was nervous. Death could have been around every corner,
Luna shot back.
The rest of us kept our cool. Why couldn't you?
Applejack questioned Luna.
The two of you, stop it!
Celestia shouted, standing between them and pushing them aside.
Stars above, you're acting like children,
Celestia said with a sigh.
Don't act so innocent, sister!
Luna whined.
And what would I have to hide?
Celestia questioned.
I don't know. Why were you jumping in and out of rooms like a psycho earlier?
Pinkie Pie said nonchalantly.
What does that have to do with anything?
Celestia questioned, staring down at the pink mare.
What's the matter, little miss? I have nothing to hide. Some ponies spill the beans,
Pinkie Pie said sarcastically.
Everyone stop it!
Twilight said, as every eye shot back to her.
We all might have some evidence against us, but I know Pinkie Pie is the killer. It's her party cannon. She was the first one to find me, and she led me straight to the murder. There's your proof,
Twilight said, once again pointing to Pinkie Pie.
For the last time, the party cannon is locked in the room over there. You can check. If it was moved, then Twilight's the killer.
Pinkie Pie said, once again pointing to the closet.
No, Applejack's playing with you both. I saw dragons in these, plus she's the strongest. She broke the door down and moved the cannon without anyone knowing,
Luna said, quickly accusing Applejack again.
It's not me! Pinkie Pie, you said Celestia was looking in and out of rooms, probably trying to find a hiding spot for it.
Applejack said, placing the blame on Celestia.
Applejack! No, all of you, listen. Luna's acting hostile all night. She's taking her pent-up aggression out through murder.
Celestia said as she recalled Applejack's evidence.
How dare you, sister! I'm not the killer! Yes, you are! You are the killer! No, I'm not!
The group went around in a circle like this for a few more moments. Twilight, as her curiosity piqued, slowly walked over to the closet door.
Quiet!
Twilight shouted to the group. The group once again looked back over to her.
I know of one way to clear this bit up.
Twilight sighed.
Pinkie Pie, if your cannon is in here, you are innocent. For now, at least.
Twilight said, grabbing a hold of the padlock. Twilight quickly twisted the knob on the lock until the code was complete, causing the lock to open. Twilight threw it to the floor and then looked at the closet. Twilight did remember putting the cannon in here before the party, and she definitely did not open the lock since. The group sat in silence as Twilight slowly reached for the knob. With a gulp, Twilight twisted the knob but did not dare open the door, afraid of what was on the other side. Was Pinkie Pie really a murderer? Or was the killer her subconscious, doing things without her knowing? With a deep breath, Twilight flung the door open. Inside was the party cannon, fuse lit and aiming right for her. Twilight's eyes went wide, and she screamed as the cannon went off, replaying the last murder for all to see. The group ducked as Twilight's body flew back towards them, landing with a lifeless thud. As the smoke and ashes was causing the ponies to cough, Applejack got off the ground and ran to her friend.
Twilight!
Applejack shouted, putting her ear to Twilight's chest. As Applejack feared, there was no sound. Twilight was gone. The group sat in silence for a moment at the loss of their friend, until Applejack realized something.
The party cannon just killed another person. Pinkie, why do I agree with Twilight now?
Applejack said, getting more intense. Pinkie realized her situation and began to slowly back away. The rest of the group got up and stared her down.
This isn't what you think!
Pinkie Pie said.
I'm not the killer!
She cried out.
Really? Because your party cannon just killed another pony.
Celestia pointed out.
I know! But I don't know how or why. I'm not the killer!
Pinkie Pie shouted as she began to cry hysterically. The group backed up Pinkie Pie into a wall and surrounded her. Pinkie feared the worst as Luna spoke up.
This is it, Pinkie Pie. We know you are the killer. It's time to pay for what you've done.
She said in a commanding and terrifying voice.
Any last words?
Asked Luna, staring daggers at the cowering pony. Just as Pinkie was about to give up, she realized something. Something that might just save her.
As a matter of fact, yes. Let me see the poem.
Pinkie Pie said, holding out a shaky hoof. Applejack walked over to the table that the poem had previously been set down on and brought it to Pinkie Pie. Pinkie Pie quickly scanned it over and then a wave of relief washed over her.
Look here. It says, one blamed another. That's talking about Twilight.
Pinkie Pie said, showing the paper to everyone.
Yeah, so?
Luna asked in confusion.
Well, it says here that only 5 ponies should be left.
Pinkie Pie said, reading on.
Look here.
Applejack said, pointing to an earlier verse.
It says, one was dethroned.
Applejack read.
I saw Rarity in the throne room earlier. So, that means...
Applejack said with a gulp.
That means the killer must have struck there too.
Celestia concluded.
Right. So there's only 5 ponies left.
Pinkie Pie said again.
Again, so?
Luna asked again.
I guess what I'm trying to say here is...
Pinkie Pie said, putting the pieces together. The group waited in suspense to hear her conclusion.
Where's Fluttershy?
Pinkie asked to everyone's horror.
Six little ponies trying to stay alive. One blamed another, and then there were 5.
I think I was in a... English? I must say, I think I was in a coma? What was I gonna say? Then why am I wasting my time with this? I mean, the murder could happen be anywhere. English, murder. I read that wrong, and I thought that said murderer. Oops, I was saying that right. I mean, the murderer could be any... Fuck. There we go, now I'm saying murderer instead of murder. I mean, the murder could happen... Fuck. English. I mean, the murder could have happened anywhere. Fucking damn it. We all might have the same evidence, English. We all might have the same... Fuck! We all might have some evidence against us, but I know Pinkie Pie is the killer. It's her party cannon. She was the one to first find me. She led me straight to the murder. There's your proof. That's some Danganronpa 1, Chapter 1 logic right there. From the first game. That's some same logic there.
I saved Twilight from a box. She said she was...
Cannot stumble over your words, Pinkie. They're not gonna take this shit from you. You've got everyone against you. There's so much evidence piled up against you. You cannot stumble over your words. It's only gonna make you seem like you don't know what to say. Now you're supposed to be thinking on your feet, because unless you want to get murdered right then and there and become another motherfucking notch in someone's killer belt, you better step the fuck up.
I saved Twilight from a box. She said was trapped. She was trapped.
What are pronouns? Don't know. She did.
Pinkie Pie said, holding out a shaky hoof. Microphone.
I swear microphone. No.
Pinkie Pie, why did you just come out now? Let me try that again. Pinkie asked to every...
Oh my god, I was so close to the end of the reading, and then all of a sudden my microphone started to be total butthole. God damn it. Technology microphone. You wish I'd be a butthole all the freaking time?
Anyway, on my Granny Smith rant. I'm done with that. I'm gonna try it again.